Short-lived but turbulent, Great Western Trains was Britain's first private franchise in the intercity sector, commencing operations in February 1996 and lasting just over 2 years until March 1998, when it was acquired fully by shareholder First Group. But during its fleeting tenure, Great Western Trains would not only prove to be one of the most stylish of the franchises, but also among the most controversial, setting the tone for privatisation going forward as the former British Rail was transferred into fragmented and competitive sectors. The privatisation of the state-owned British Rail essentially began during the late 1980s and early 1990s through what had been known as shadow privatisation, having been reorganised into sector-based businesses, including InterCity, Network South East and Regional Railways, each of which had clearer financial accountability and branding. The Great Western Main Line, stretching from London Paddington to Bristol, South Wales, Devon and Cornwall, sat within the intercity sector and had benefited significantly from the introduction of the high-speed train in the late 1970s, and by the early 1980s, intercity services on the Western region were among the more commercially robust parts of the national network. Yet the political momentum behind privatisation gathered pace, and the John Major government pressed ahead with the Railways Act of 1993, fragmenting the vertically integrated British rail system into infrastructure, rolling stock leasing companies, freight businesses and passenger franchises, with infrastructure passing to Railtrack, rolling stock to be leased from private rolling stock companies or ROSCOs, and passenger services would be let as fixed-term franchises overseen by the Office of Passenger Rail Franchising. With a general election looming in 1997 and the opposition pledging renationalisation, the urgency among ministers was to move the industry irrevocably into private hands, despite critics such as Lord Clinton Davis condemning what they saw as fragmentation and asset stripping, while figures including Sir George Young defended privatisation as a means of injecting competition, private capital and managerial freedom, with Young later arguing that privatisation freed the railways from treasury constraints and forced operators to look outward to customers rather than inward to subsidy. Against this backdrop, the former intercity sector was divided into individual franchises based on mainline routes, including Intercity Anglia, Intercity Great Western, Intercity West Coast and Intercity East Coast, among others, with each being prepared for tender, while internally, senior British Rail managers on the Western region began positioning themselves for a management buyout. At the time, former BR executives believed they understood the business better than external transport groups and could operate it more flexibly outside state control. But, as passenger representatives later observed, the sale process distracted senior leadership, and time that might have been spent devoted to operational performance was instead consumed by negotiations with bankers, lawyers and prospective investors. OPRAF sought operators willing to commit to defined service levels under a 7-year plain vanilla contract, with there being no obligation to introduce new trains, and the minimum service specification was broadly aligned with that inherited from British Rail, with bidders competing on the level of subsidy required, efficiency gains, and their commercial protections for revenue growth, with the management buyout model offering the reassurance of continuity of operational expertise, combined with private sector discipline and capital. In December 1995, the Director of Passenger Rail Franchising awarded the Great Western Intercity franchise to Great Western Holdings, of which 51% was held by former British Rail managers in a management buyout, 24.5% by First Bus, and 24.5% by the private equity firm 3i, and at 2 a.m. on Sunday, February 4, 1996, the company assumed control, commencing public operations later that morning as Great Western Trains. The establishment of Great Western Trains came on the same day as the formation of South West Trains, which operated its first service at 5:10 from Twickenham to Waterloo, with Great Western inheriting 86 Class 43 power cars leased from Angel Trains, alongside 13 Class 47s that ran both the Night Riviera sleeper and a selection of daytime relief trains from London Paddington to Plymouth and Penzance. Great Western Trains was exclusively an intercity operator, with no dedicated stopping services aside from a few slower diagrams, while also inheriting various prestigious named trains, including the Cornish Riviera Express, the Golden Hind, the Bristolian, the Red Dragon, the Mayflower, the Royal Duchy, the Torbay Express, the St. David, and the Cheltenham Spa Express, as well as the Night Riviera sleeper. However, the first morning of Great Western Trains did not proceed smoothly, as at Reading, engineering possessions meant that some of the earliest franchise services were replaced by buses, which was seized upon by opposition figures in the Labour Party, including Glenda Jackson and Brian Wilson, who denounced the process as a fiasco, though Conservative ministers insisted that a progressive improvement would follow as private operators drove efficiency and consumer focus. Yet the transition exposed significant strains, with senior managers across the newly privatized industry being preoccupied with financial structuring and negotiations with bankers, sometimes at the expense of day-to-day operational oversight, with figures such as Christopher Irwin, vice chairman of the Rail Users Consultative Committee for the West of England, arguing that the corporate cushion of British Rail had concealed the extent to which local management teams depended on central expertise, and once separated, train operating companies such as Great Western found themselves navigating complex relationships with Railtrack, rolling stock leasing companies and regulators, without the integrated support mechanisms of the former state system. However, Great Western Trains proceeded to carve out its own identity, and on October 17, 1996, introduced the first full set in what was dubbed the Merlin livery, incorporating Class 43 power cars 43191 and 192, alongside a rig of 8 Mark III coaches, with these new colours comprising a bold green and ivory livery, complete with a stylised Merlin motif. Initially, Great Western Trains included the original InterCity logo in swallow-style font on its coaches, with Great Western being the only private operator permitted to use the InterCity branding on its carriages for a limited time, though once they had launched their own Merlin identity, copyright laws actually prohibited them from applying the InterCity brand to any newly painted stock. Ultimately, Great Western would pivot away from applying the InterCity brand onto its coaches, with a later branding that comprised a smaller font size being exclusively of Great Western markings, while aside from the Class 47s receiving an all-over green livery with Merlin logo, the sleeper stock and Mark II coaches of the relief trains remained in InterCity Swallow livery throughout the franchise's existence. Another quirk of the Great Western Trains operation was that, in an attempt to increase the appeal of the new Eurostar service out of London Waterloo, in a similar manner to the daytime Eurostar Link services, the night Riviera would operate to London Waterloo rather than Paddington from May 29, 1995 to September 26, 1998, using the West London line and the newly reinstated Sheepcote Lane curve in order to gain access to Waterloo. In terms of onboard service provision, Great Western maintained InterCity's previous high standard on the Prestige route out of London Paddington, including Pullman dining on key morning and evening services, with full silver service meals with crisp linen tablecloths and properly laid tables, with a full meal restaurant service being available on several named trains like the Cornish Riviera Express and the Bristolian, while the new company also produced stylized menus and wine lists, including special editions for events like the 1996 Cheltenham Festival. Operationally, though, Great Western Trains entered the market with relatively limited changes to service patterns, and like several early franchises, it was awarded on a comparatively straightforward 7-year contract with a minimum service specification broadly similar to that of the previously provided British Rail, and the franchise was structured with minimal direct government subsidy, meaning that income was to be generated largely through ticket sales, with this commercial exposure being intended to incentivize passenger growth, but also left the company vulnerable to fluctuations in performance and public perception. In this context, Great Western was both a flagship of the private model, but also a test case for the effectiveness of the InterCity franchises, and found itself under constant scrutiny from critics across both government and industry. But by the end of the year, it was apparent that Great Western services were already in trouble, as punctuality had declined noticeably. Reports indicated that the proportion of trains arriving within 10 minutes of schedule fell from around 90% to below 84%. With this deterioration occurring amid growing public sensitivity to reliability, particularly on heavily used commuter routes into London, while the separation of infrastructure from operations complicated accountability, as train operators frequently attributed delays to Railtrack, while Railtrack pointed to operational shortcomings, creating what was termed by critics a blame culture. Despite performance challenges, passenger demand on key intercity routes remained robust, with the Western Corridor from London to Bristol and South Wales being commercially significant, and holiday traffic to Devon and Cornwall continued to generate substantial revenue, that this surge of demand often led to overcrowding, with most express services into and out of London during the peak hours being full to standing. However, going into 1997, Great Western Trains would become the face of all that was wrong with the privatisation process, when, on September 19th of that year, a Great Western high-speed train operating from Swansea to Paddington passed a signal at danger and collided at speed with a freight train crossing its path at Southall, resulting in the deaths of 7 people and 139 injuries, becoming the first fatal accident involving a HST in service. Investigations concluded that the Automatic Warning System, or AWS, had not provided effective protection in the circumstances, and that aspects of its maintenance and operational use were deficient, and Great Western Trains was subsequently fined £1.5 million, with the Southall crash intensifying scrutiny of the newly fragmented structure of the railway. More immediately, Southall caused widespread disruption across the Great Western network, and services into Paddington would be cut off until September 21st, when the two slow lines were reopened at limited line speed, followed by full service resumption on September 24th, with Reading and Slough becoming temporary terminus stations for both Great Western and Thames Trains operations. Meanwhile, within Great Western Holdings, corporate manoeuvring was also underway during 1997, with the management buyout team, who had acquired 51% of the franchise, being positioned to benefit significantly from the rising valuations associated with railway privatization, and as punctuality figures fell and public confidence wavered, negotiations advanced behind the scenes. In March 1998, First Bus, which had been renamed to First Group in 1997, moved to purchase the 75.5% of Great Western Holdings it did not already own, with this deal being worth approximately £140 million, significantly enriching the original MBO team, and following the buyout, the franchise was formally rebranded from Great Western Trains to First Great Western in December 1998 to align with First Group's new corporate identity. FGW would quickly roll out their new livery of green, white and gold, which was often dubbed the Fag Packet livery, as it closely resembled the look of a packet of Golden Virginia cigarettes, with the first power car to receive this treatment being 43029, while due to the similarities between the old and new liveries, rollout of the FGW brand was essentially completed by the end of the year, with the last Class 43 power car being 43018, which was repainted in October 1999. Ultimately, Great Western Trains, despite being one of the shortest of the new franchises to exist, was a quietly influential part of the rapidly changing British railway scene, demonstrating the enthusiasm of the franchise operators to make their mark, but at the same time illustrating vividly the limitations of the privatization doctrine, and how early mistakes that should have been addressed during those formative years were allowed to linger well into the new millennium.